The Ecotas media team paid a courtesy visit to Professor Ijoma Vincent Apu, the National President for Association of Environmental Impact for Assessment of Nigeria, Aeian. This is a voluntary organization mandatory by law, which is also an evaluation tool that will help the decision makers to know the effect of a project on an environment before an approval will be given.
EIA is a planning tool that will help the proponents to plan their projects in such a way that it will reduce the impact it will have on the environment. And it's also an evaluation tool that will help the decision makers to know the effect of a project on the environment before a major decision can be taken or before approval will be given. And EIA is a process. It has a beginning, it has an end. So it's a systematic process that helps both the proponents or the regulators to know the impact of a project on the environment, to know what to do, the mitigation measures they will put in place before a decision is taken on that project, whether to develop it or not. So it's a way of helping us to know the impact of a project or a development they're about to take before starting that project. So it's kind of helping us to know what impact it will have before we start our project. EIA is mandatory by law for major projects. It's not just in Nigeria, it's global. Most countries have their own EIA, but we have a typical EIA that's the process, but it might change a little with different countries. But whichever one, what they try to do is to, before you start a project, a major project, not every project, there are some good projects, but the major ones that will have adverse effects on the environment, you have to carry out an EIA process to help you identify the impact, bring out mitigation measures that will be a kind of environmental management plan that you use in carrying out that project.
It is also responsible for helping the proponents to plan their project in a way that it reduces the impact it has on the environment, and also bring mitigation measures that will be a kind of environmental management plan used to carry out a project.
Yes, the association is Association for Environmental Impact Assessment of Nigeria. So it's an umbrella body for environmental impact assessment practitioners. So all of them supposed to be there, in as much as it's a voluntary organization. But most of them are here. And what do we do? Apart from training our members, because there's always updating and best practice, since EIA is not just carried out in Nigeria, it's an affiliate of International Association for Impact Assessment. So most of what we do is in line with the association, the international body. And what we do is we advocate for people to follow the right process. Our members carry out this project or the process, knowing the best method to use, the best practice. So that's what they use to carry out this. Then the government, most of the regulators are still part of our members. So they have the right training to know what to do at each time. So during each process, our association is involved. It's either we're involved as the proponent or the consultants that are doing this project, or the regulators that will look at it before making a decision. But in each step, we're always involved. And what are the steps involved? When the proposal is being submitted to the regulators, they screen the project to know which category it will belong to. You ask a question on what type of project. We have the ones that will require full EIA, that's the major projects, depending on how the magnitude or the impact it will have in the environment. But what we need to know that oil projects, oil development projects, they're all mandatory full EIA. So these are major projects that will have impact on the environment. So they screen it and look at the project, the category it will belong to, category 1, 2, or 3. After that, they go for the scoping process. That's the time they come to the communities. And that's when sometimes we join in going to the community. Sometimes we join the community, they can call our members as consultants to look at what the proponents want to do. The proponents are the owners of the project. They come to the community, they look at it, they sit down, they consult with the community to tell them this is what we want to do. The community will tell them their concern, and this happens during the scoping process. At the end of the scoping process, they have what they call the term of reference, which will show what and what will be carried out. And the regulators will okay the terms of reference. Now they will come back to do the full AIA, that's the full assessment. That's when they study the environment, the baseline. That's what do we have in the environment now before the project starts. So that if the project starts and there's any change in the environment, you can say, is this project that is causing it? So they come and study what we have on ground to know what is there before the project starts. After studying it, if they see, they will identify impacts. From this impact, they will bring out mitigation measure. That's what can they do to avoid the impact, reduce the impact, or offset this impact that will happen in the environment. With that, they put up what they call the mitigation measures. What can we do to avoid this impact? And this we will put in their management plan. All these things they put up in a report that will be submitted to the regulators. Then the regulators will look at it. They can call experts to look at it. Our members too are part of the experts that will look at this. And depending on the project, they can call a panel review where they'll get this expert, get the proponent to come and talk about their projects. So they look at it, and at the end, they make a decision. So our members are always involved in any of this. And when EIA is not properly carried out, we will talk. We will go talk to the community, talk to the proponent. That's part of what we do. And before they call for review, there's always display, a time they call for display. Because this EIA report, they will leave for 21 working days. They put it in strategic places for people to come and make comments, for people to come and look at it. If they have any reservation, any gap in what they have done, they will still write to the government. So sometimes we do that. We go look at this report. If we observe anything that is not good enough, we'll send a comment to the regulator. And the regulators in Nigeria, they are Federal Ministry of Environment. And that's what we do.
The president still went on to emphasize that we need sustainable growth for our environment to thrive. And if we have a just economic transformation, it will help us to handle our environmental issues. And so, impact assessment is the right tool.
As much as you're talking about implementation, it might be a problem. But for AIA that is being done properly, it will mitigate some of this. But when it is not, that's where we have problem. But by rights, mitigation measures should be put in place. I'm sure sometimes you do hear when some communities will ask, did they do EIA for this? Because when they finish EIA, the management plan, environmental management plan, that's what they will use to work on their project. It will help them to plan their projects well. And these are being followed by some companies or some proponents. But some, as you said, we have a problem with enforcement. If you don't force somebody to do something, they might not do it. But by right, if they understand that EIA is a planning tool, that'll help them understand the environment. It will even save money for them, because when you undergo this study, you will see what will happen if you put your project here. This is what it will lead to. So it is a planning tool, but they don't see that. They're always looking at, I want to do this project. But EIA takes time. And that's why most times they don't want to, they will start with their project because they're in a hurry. It takes time because you have to study. There's some EIA you have to study during the wet season and dry season. And that's almost a year. And if you plan to do something, you have to. So, but it's better they do the EIA before starting the project. But like that Lagos Calabar highway, it's a long project. It takes, I think, how many years? It takes a long time. So they are starting to do it bit by bit. And EIA allows you to do bit by bit too. So it's like they're doing the section A part of it, which is less than 50 kilometers. So, but then the EIA is in progress. This EIA started with the US. Even they started, that's 1958 or so. That's when they started in one. But in Nigeria, I think they started in 1992. That's when the EIA law came into place. So when did we start drilling? That's quite a long time. But we can still mitigate our impact if we study the environment and follow what is good for the environment. We can mitigate the impacts.
Okay, Prof. We know that there is a conference coming up.
Yes.
So can you briefly tell about the conference?
Yeah, the conference is a conference for this Association for Environmental Impact Assessment. And I think this is the 8th annual conference with the theme Sustainable Growth. You need sustainable growth for us, our environment to thrive, and socioeconomic transformation. There are a lot of things happening, changing the socioeconomics of most things happening. So if you have a just economic transformation, it will help us handle our environmental issues, impact, and impact assessment is the right tool to use. So our theme is sustainable growth and socioeconomic transformation, environmental issues, impact, and assessment. It's happening in Port Harcourt, a University of Port Harcourt, and it will happen 15th October to 17th October